Webinars and live events can be an incredibly powerful tool for building, engaging, and selling to an online audience. And they've been gaining popularity recently. If that's something you want to get into, or if you're already doing webinars but you're frustrated with the software you're currently using, you might be wondering what software or tool should you use for webinars and live streams. Today, I'm reviewing Crowdcast, which is a platform made for exactly this purpose. And we're going to review Crowdcast from the perspective of, first of all, someone who's done dozens upon dozens of webinars over many years. So I've used webinars as a marketing tool for a long time. And I'm looking at this from the perspective of mainly two purposes. To me, the two most powerful things about live events are, number one, being able to interact with and have like a real engagement and build a real relationship with my audience live. So this kind of interaction and engagement, that's the first super important thing. And the second thing is marketing, using webinars as a sales tool. That can be super powerful. And so I'm looking for marketing and sales features in a platform like this. So with that said, let's have a look at Crowdcast. Hello there, I'm Shane Millach from activegrowth.com, and let's look at Crowdcast right away. When you sign up, you get signed into a dashboard, and let's start by creating a new event right away. So this is pretty easy. I'm going to call this demo event. You can schedule it, you can give it a description, and you can do a few more things. You can add more details, but basically with just that, with just the title schedule, it can basically go right away. Another thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure the webinar is unlisted because it's not a real one. I don't want it to show up publicly. And you can even set password protection and payment options if you want to do premium events. And more on that a bit later. We can also upload an image and even a YouTube trailer for this if we want. Let's just do the image as an example. And then save that. And once we save, we basically send straight into the preparation room for our live event. Here we have a bunch of options. We can see the basic details. There's a chat that anyone who registers for this event can take part in right away. So even before the event starts, people can chat with each other. And we have things like analytics. We have a list of people who have joined and registered. We have questions, polls, and a call to action. Let me also show you this. So here we can have a button text such as click me. And let's just link this to activegrowth.com. And then we can show or hide that at any time. And also more on this in a moment. Now, what you can do here is share, and you get a link. You can also embed this, and you can share it on social media. And so your visitors, your potential visitors, will see a landing page that is automatically generated, but also not very customizable, right? So anyone who clicks on that link will just see your event. They can sign up there. And this is very, very convenient. But like I said, it is not very customizable. You can have the image and the description, but not much else. Once you want to get started, you can click this green button right here, and you can either use a streaming software if you're paying the mid-tier price or higher, or you can just use kind of the built-in tools to go live. And this is super convenient. If you do this for the first time, you will be prompted like this to give access to your camera and microphone. And you can also set this up so you can switch between different cameras. If you have more than one, you can choose the microphone. And you can preview what this looks like before you go live. You can also choose to share your screen, and this is done through the Chrome screen sharing. So you can choose to share a specific window or your entire screen, and you can easily switch between your live video and the screen, or live video and screen side by side. And once you're ready, once all of this looks right, you can simply go live, and everyone attending will start seeing your live stream. Something worth noting about Crowdcast is that it has kind of a social network aspect built into it. So when you sign up for Crowdcast, either as a presenter or even just as a guest, you get your own profile. And so here's an example of such a profile. You can have your profile bio, you can have your image, people can follow you, they can see past events, they can see scheduled events as long as those events are not unlisted. And so the idea is that it has this social network effect where you can build up your audience within Crowdcast. and people who follow you will be notified whenever you schedule a new event. If we go to the Crowdcast homepage, we can also see that there's a Discover feature here where there's basically a directory of currently scheduled future webinars and events. And so this is, again, the kind of social and public aspect where people can browse webinars that are coming up, and people can choose to follow specific presenters and so on. And this is important to keep in mind because Crowdcast kind of leans more towards the social side than like the marketing and selling side. With that said, let me give you a quick overview of my favorite things about Crowdcast, my least favorite things about it, and the most meh things about it. And then give you a conclusion so you can decide whether this is for you or not. So my favorite things about Crowdcast. One of the greatest strengths of this platform is just how easy it is to get started. Live events and live streaming can be pretty complicated, and there's a lot of software out there that's just very, very complicated. Crowdcast is easy. If you're not a complete technophobe, you can go from zero to live streaming your first event within minutes with this platform. That's definitely a huge plus here. Then probably my favorite thing about Crowdcast is the questions and answers feature. So in Crowdcast, there is a live chat where anyone can just chat, and basically your audience members can chat with each other. You can also turn this off if you'd prefer not to have that. But there's a separate feature for asking questions. And you can invite your audience to put questions that they want you to answer in there. And there's two things about this. First of all, people can add their questions and they can see questions other people have asked, and they can vote on those questions. This is a hugely valuable tool because a very common problem with a live event, as soon as you have, let's say 100 or more people on a live event, it becomes almost impossible to keep up with all the questions and comments you get. And as a host, it puts you in an unpleasant spot where you have all these questions coming in. It's just like a long list, usually in chronological order. And you can't possibly answer all of them. But it's also difficult to decide, well, which ones should I answer, right? If I only have, I can maybe answer 10 to 15 questions, but which ones? And this solution is just perfect. You can invite people and you can tell people very clearly, look, you can use the chat to talk about whatever you want. But if you want me to see a question, ask it in the questions box and upvote other people's questions. And then you can even say, look, we have time for 10 questions, right? I'm going to answer the 10 most upvoted questions. And this, I think, is a great way to give people an overview of what have other people asked. And they can, instead of just asking a similar question, they can just upvote one that's already there. And you can basically serve the largest number of people possible in your audience with this one feature. Another great thing in Crowdcast is that you can easily invite anyone to join you in the presentation. So you can choose anyone in your audience and invite them to also share their webcam and microphone. And this can be good for events with multiple hosts or interviews, if you want to live stream an interview. And it can be great for example, group coaching with smaller groups where you can invite people to actually join you and have a back and forth with them and basically do more involved questions and answers. So that's a really powerful engagement feature right there. And also worth mentioning is that there's a direct Patreon integration with Crowdcast, which I think is brilliant. It's a niche case, but if you are a Patreon creator and you want to do exclusive live events that are only for people who support you on Patreon, this is the easiest way to do it, right? You can set an event and basically say only my paying patrons can join this event. And it's a direct integration. I think that's a very clever solution. So here are the things that I find most meh about Crowdcast. First of all, is this social network aspect. I think that can be, or it can look attractive at first glance. But building a social audience on a different platform is just not that useful. I don't think that Crowdcast is a great place to build an audience. I don't think you'll get that much exposure there. That might change in the future, but even so, it's just much less valuable to have some people follow you on another platform that is not your own. I would much rather have people follow me, be subscribers to my mailing list or follow me on my own website. That's worth so much more. And I think the fact that they lean towards the social more than towards the marketing, really for most purposes, isn't that great. Another thing that's not that great is that with the call to action, I showed you how you can do a call to action. You can only have one of them, and all you can do is you can basically display this shy little button with very little customization. It's better than nothing, So you can, if you're doing a sales webinar, when you get to your pitch, you can display that button, tell people click on that button to get my special offer or whatever. But it's just a bit weak. It's not very attention grabbing. It's this shy little button. You can only have one. It's just, yeah, like I said, it's better than nothing, but it's not much better than nothing. Another thing that is just kind of a bit of a trade-off is that it's very easy to switch between like screen sharing and camera being live on screen. And you can have both on screen at the same time. But if you're sharing a presentation or your screen and you have a picture-in-picture video, that video is a tiny size in the lower left corner, and it's so small that it might as well not be there. Like, it shrinks your video down to such a small size that people basically can't see you anymore. And I understand, like, okay, they want to move the video out of the way of the screen so it doesn't get in the way of something you're showing on screen. But I think a better compromise there would be to show that video, the picture-in-picture video, at a reasonable size, and then I just switch to full screen sharing in case that picture-in-picture video is in the way. So I found that it just seems like a strange choice to make the video so small that it's, you just see a couple pixels moving about. You can barely recognize someone's face anymore. And that brings me to the worst things about Crowdcast. The worst thing about it is that there's an arbitrary 2-hour limit on every session you start. So no matter what you do, whenever you start any kind of session, it's always automatically limited to 2 hours. You get a warning after 90 minutes, and after 2 hours, it ends. I don't know why this is. The suggested solution from the help is that, well, you can just add another session. So your session ends after 2 hours. You tell people, okay, stick around. I'm going to start another session right now. And then everybody joins the other session and we continue. But why? And this is a big problem, especially on the marketing side. Because if you're doing a webinar that includes sales, and especially if it's for a high ticket item, such a webinar will typically take a long time. Because you want to share a lot of value to really prove that, your expensive product is worth buying. And then you're selling your expensive product and the pitch part. So usually you do a pitch and then questions and answers. And a good rule of thumb is that as long as people are still buying, keep it going. And this is especially important if you're selling something for $1,000 or more. It's absolutely worth keeping a webinar going for another hour or two to get some more sales. So as long as people are still on the webinar, they're still watching, they're still asking questions, you're still answering questions and demoing and so on, and they're still buying, there's just no reason to stop the webinar. Another thing I dislike is the way things are displayed during your webinar, and specifically answers and polls. So you can create polls, but you can't show a poll at a specific time. The poll will just be there. You can tell people, oh, click on the poll and answer it now. But you can't hide the poll until like the right moment comes. And it's just kind of awkward, right? Instead of just telling people, okay, the thing you see on screen now, that's the poll, answer the question now. It's like you have to tell them, oh, there's this little link at the bottom, answer it now. So it's not that great. Another thing is that when you are choosing questions to answer during the live event, this is great. You can choose to display a question on screen. You can say, okay, this is the question I'm answering now. Everybody will see that in the audience, but not in the replay. Okay, in the replay, that's just not the case. And so it creates a bit of a crappy situation, because if you want a useful replay, you'll have to read out the question anyway. And so then you're showing the question to everyone and you're reading it out, which is kind of redundant during the live thing. But if you don't do that, then it's confusing during the replay. So again, that should just be the displaying of these questions and answers should just be handled in a better way. Another problem from a marketing perspective is that there's no real multi-user access here. So typically when I do webinars, I will have 2 or 3 people involved. For example, 2 hosts, so 2 people doing the presenting, and 1 person doing assistance. So they would be moderating the comments, maybe banning users if they're trolling, answering questions, and so on. Now, in Crowdcast, there's no real way to do this. You can share your login with multiple people, so you basically have several people logged in as you, and they can all join and do all this stuff, but that's clearly not the right way to do it. So again, it's a bit of a downside, especially if you get into kind of more advanced marketing-based live events. And finally, something I dislike about Crowdcast is that some of the features are locked behind the mid-tier pricing plan, which is $90 a month. such as integrating with your email marketing service so that people who sign up for a webinar automatically go on your mailing list, as well as a live streaming feature where you can use Crowdcast to live stream to places like YouTube and Facebook. I think they're shooting themselves in the foot a little bit with this pricing because, as I see it, the main thing you pay more for is a larger audience, right? You pay a small price in order to have crowds of, let's say, up to 100 people, and you pay a larger, like the more people you have, the more you pay. That makes sense, right? If I'm doing events to a larger audience, I pay more money. But it would be very useful if people could get started and use this thing to build their mailing list without having to pay almost double the entry level tier. All right, with all that said, you can see that there are some things I like about this thing. There's some things I really don't like about it. But what's the conclusion? What should you do? I think that Crowdcast is a great platform to get started. If you have never done webinars before, or if you're currently using something that is just super frustrating for you and you want an easier solution, I think Crowdcast is great to get started. The entry-level price is a fair price for what you get. And if you have audiences of 100 people or less, I think this is a good place to get started. The marketing tools, like I said, are a bit lacking, but they're good enough, right? You can get started. What's likely is that once you grow a larger audience and you start doing more routine webinars and more webinars for different purposes, it's likely that you might want to upgrade to a better solution, a different solution, a more marketing focused solution later on. But I do think Crowdcast is a good place to start. Also, like I mentioned before, it's kind of a niche case, but if you are a Patreon creator and you want to do live events for your patrons, that's probably the easiest way to do it, is just go with Crowdcast and skip past a whole lot of complications on the way. All right, that's my look at Crowdcast for live streaming and webinars. And this is the first in a series of reviews on webinar tools that I'm going to be doing. Let me know your thoughts and experiences by leaving a comment below. And if there are specific tools you think I have to include in my review of webinar tools, also let me know with a comment.